So another colleague during the previous session mentioned that he made it all the way from architecture to urban planning in order to be closer and be able to influence more the process. I actually went it all the way back to policies and funding in a similar attempt. But I plan to go back to architecture very soon. Let me tell you about cohesion policy. I will not have that many pictures, so if my text-only slides will bore you, stay tuned, because there is a nice video at the end. And the reason why I'm not having that many pictures is because cohesion policy is what we say a shared management environment, where we at the EU Commission set up the policy framework. We define the policies and underpinning rationale for investments. But it's actually then the member states that negotiate with us their so-called operational programs. And the selection of projects is actually completely left up to the member states. So we only learn about these projects at the very end once the member states share them with us. So what do we have? A cohesion policy also operate in a 7-year time frame, and we are now in the middle, if not towards the end of the 14-20 programming period, where the mainstream cohesion policy, I will explain later why I say mainstream, allows for investments into cultural heritage under the so-called thematic objective 6, there are 11 altogether, on preserving and protecting environment and promoting resource efficiently. So under these thematic objectives, there are 2 investments priorities, one on conserving, protecting, promoting, and developing natural and cultural heritage, and the other one is on taking action to improve the urban environment, revitalize cities, regenerate and decontaminate brownfields. So as you see, built heritage and adaptive reuse didn't make it yet to the cohesion policy terminology, but by all means, such investments are very welcome under this framework. However, I have to say that investments in heritage projects have at the moment, so to say, internally a negative reputation. It is because many of the member states take advantage of this conserving, protecting cultural heritage. So we end up with what was mentioned earlier, these standalone projects, overfinance, renovated for the sake of renovation. And, you know, I've seen projects when they do this state-of-the-art renovation and then sit in it and try and think, what could we do with this building? What kind of business plan could we develop after the fact, not before the fact? One of such examples has been mentioned, unfortunately, linked to my own country, in Dubrovnik, Croatia, in the earlier presentation. So this is the standalone projects that we don't like that much, but they continue happening, especially because there is an imperative to spend the money within the same 7-year time frame. So these projects are kind of huge money eaters and help member states in their absorption efforts. I'm from actually Unit for Urban and Territorial Development, which is a kind of a separate strand of the cohesion policy, where we advocate an integrated approach. Why an integrated approach? Because multiple challenges we are faced with today, economic, social, environmental, require actually an integrated mix of interventions in order to maximize the impact. Here is a quotation from Professor Barca, who very much influenced this trend of the cohesion policy. Hold on a second. Okay, why the place-based approach? is as opposed to what we call spatially blind interventions. The place-based approaches engage local stakeholders, local community, local knowledge, local heritage, and bring it to the full potential of certain area. So such an integrated and place-based approach, it's in our terminology, the closest we get to territorial identity. This especially gained prominence in so-called urban dimension of the cohesion policy that was put at the very heart this time around during this 14-20 programming period. Let me move to another slide. Let me apply it to the urban regeneration, which almost always involves heritage sites, which are more sustainable if conceived from the onset in a holistic manner as a part of integrated place-based development effort, underpinned by sustainable urban development strategies. This was a requirement on our part that such interventions under this specific strand are underpinned by sustainable urban development strategies. There was also a requirement to invest at least 5%, for each member states, to invest at least 5% of ERDF funding to sustainable urban development. This ended up being much more. Basically, this 15 billion accounts for over 8%. It was coupled also by ESF funding. And we ended up having 900 different sustainable urban development strategies. These strategies, when I say urban development strategies, each member state defined their urban. So urban was either cities of any sizes within their administrative borders, or what we much more preferred, cities within their functional area. It could also have been an urban neighborhood or a suburb. So there is a whole diversity of strategies, and we were actually surprised ourselves how many we got. And we conducted a comprehensive study to collect all these strategies and map them together with joint research centers. And first link here takes you to this mapped strategies, and you can search there, for instance, for the keywords. And I am preparing for this, I searched for heritage, and it came up in 1/3 of these 900 strategies. So I don't know in what exactly context, but this already tells you a lot what urban authorities are thinking. Let me just mention, make reference to the two examples that were shown before. I already mentioned the city of Dubrovnik being this standalone investment, but there was also the investment from Anderlecht, which would more qualify this comprehensive, holistic approach, which we are very much after. So this is the two things we are looking at. We are trying to avoid the first ones and trying to encourage the ones like Anderlecht, the project that was shown earlier. In addition to different funding mechanisms, we also have a whole range of programs in support of that, which kind of talk about learning, capacity building, networking, gathering knowledge. One of this tool was Urban Development Network, where country-specific workshops were held, and there were peer reviews of these strategies, and it turned out to be very helpful. Let me mention here a peer review which we had in Ghent sometimes last year, where we reviewed Ghent's strategy for reconstruction of their old harbor, which is a kind of a multi-decade process which will take incredibly much investments, but they are structuring it that along the way It allows for temporary use, different community initiatives, and it's, again, one of the projects we very much like to see funded under our funds. I would like to mention URBAC program, which is, again, a program supporting sustainable urban development, organizing networks around urban themes. I will mention here 2 refill projects that favored temporary use of vacant sites. I know there are some constraints, legislative constraints here, but we've seen approaches that some countries manage to get waivers for such temporary use, and I know for a fact that Slovenia, for instance, recently amended its legislation to allow for temporary use of heritage sites. There is a Second Chance project which engaged a different network, which was about activating underutilized and abandoned spaces, so-called urban voids. You can follow the links and find more information. And then we have ESPON program, which is a program for promotion, production, promotion, and distribution of territorial evidence obtained through research. And the program has 2 research mechanisms, one called targeted analysis, where they recently had a project dealing with the material cultural heritage and the economic repercussions it has on a selected number of member states they look into, but they are soon to embark on another pan-European applied research where they look at cultural heritage in a more comprehensive manner as a source of societal well-being in European regions. And this research will actually underpin the work of, I will talk about it in a second, Urban Agenda Partnership on Culture and Cultural Heritage. It will also provide a cohesion policy, very much needed information on the importance of cultural heritage. Let us move on. We also have a designated program for experimenting along themes of the urban agenda, which favors innovative solutions to these urban themes. And I would like to announce the ongoing call at the moment. The deadline is 31st January, which includes the theme of land use and nature-based solutions. You can follow this link and find more detail. So we explicitly make reference here to adaptive reuse of vacant and underutilized land. When we say underutilized land, that involves spaces, buildings, everything. Regeneration and increase of the multifunctionality of already built-up areas and conversion of old infrastructure. So if any of you are interested, this call is still open and you can apply. Let me give you a little glimpse at the next programming cycle, so-called post-2020 cohesion policy, which we try to considerably simplify. And this policy is organized around now 5 policy objectives. And policy objective 5, at a temporary, called Europe Closer to Citizens. I say temporary because this is just a proposal, it's not yet fully finalized, which will be the policy objective for all these place-based integrated interventions to take place. And we have brought the interventions into cultural heritage under these policy objectives. So this intervention will now almost all have to be this multidisciplinary, integrated place involving local communities and be underpinned by strategies. And all these programs that deal with capacity, networking, learning, they are also being brought on to the single European Urban Initiative platform, which will be deal at one place with networking, innovative actions, knowledge, policy development, and communication. This is still under development. So as you see, we kind of try to simplify the rather complex architecture we had on the previous policy cycle. And then we arrived to the urban agenda for the EU. This is actually an intergovernmental initiative, not the EU Commission initiative, although the Commission takes part in it as one of the 3 equal partners, together with member states, cities, which all work as equals in the partnership along 12 urban themes, many of which are relevant to cultural heritage, such as housing, land use, circular economy. And these partnerships worked over the last few years on identifying actions for better regulation, better funding, and better knowledge for the cities. So by now, 11 of these action plans are already fully finalized and are entering into the implementation stage. You can view them on the Futurium website for the Urban Agenda for the EU. Since some of the partnership will be phasing out soon, it opens space for 2 new partnerships that will start working at the beginning of the next year. The one on culture and cultural heritage. Let's see what they come up with, what kind of actions they foresee. But let me, at the end, mention 2 partnerships where I personally was involved, and I might have influenced this a bit. But these are the 2 actually partnerships that deal with reuse and adaptive reuse, each one from their own perspective. The Land Use and Nature-Based Solution Partnership followed a vision of livable compactness. And under that vision, they were trying to, they have this action which will help them identify and manage underutilized land areas, buildings. And they are doing this from the efficient land use perspective, trying to prevent additional land take and prevent urban sprawling. Then there is a circular economy partnership which approach this from their circularity perspective, which talks about managing and reusing the buildings. They go this far, and they want the traditional urban planning to actually fully transition to reuse planning. I found a great partner in this partnership in a deputy mayor of the city of Prato in Italy, who is an architect himself. And I will show you the video they produced on this particular action. So we are ready for the video. Thank you.
The concept of circular economy provides extraordinary opportunity to rethink our cities. A solution is to develop innovative models for urban regeneration of spaces and buildings by reducing new land use. This virtuous method generates jobs, new business models, and new cultural and social opportunities.
The idea of creating an urban reuse agency is inspired by work carried out by the municipality of Prato in partnership with the European Urban Agenda on Circular Economy. The concept is that circular reuse, transposed on space and buildings, open up scenarios and regeneration challenges that stimulate collaboration amongst the public administration, businesses, tertiary sector and citizens.
Why Prato?
Prato is a city in constant evolution, with almost 200,000 inhabitants, making it the 2nd largest city in Tuscany and the 3rd largest in central Italy by number of residents. A textile district with 7,500 companies producing about 3% of the European textile industry. an ICT sector with over 700 companies and young startups, a tradition of circular economy of wool and the reuse of industrial wastewater, but also culture, contemporary art, and more.
Prato is one of the 5G Italian pilot cities, selected to experiment with new innovative services that will have a positive impact on the lives of citizens and businesses. This will kickstart the city's digital transformation, which will mark a real turning point, especially in reference to our leading manufacturing sector, textile and clothing. The city is experimenting with a new approach of urban reuse management that paves the way for the transformation of our cities into circular cities.
To achieve this goal, the focus idea is to promote a new model of governance of the city through the creation of a management subject able to map disused buildings, draw up a coefficient of reusability, and make the match between the various subjects, able to transform these spaces into new studios, startups, lodging, laboratories, creative residences, etc., giving new life to new creative and innovative hubs. We will apply this model to a specific area of Prato. Macrolotto Zero is a complex area of 65 hectares that in the 60s and 70s represented the model factory city where productive activities and housing coexisted. Today, the district hosts, together with Italian citizens, one of the largest Chinese community in Europe. The administration's vision is to transform the Macrolotto Zero in the creative district of the Prato-Florence-Pistoia metropolitan area, promoting the reuse of existing buildings.
The Urban Reuse Agency is transferable and a replicable model in every urban context. Disused and underused space in all European cities can become opportunities for new jobs, the promotion of collaborative economy, social innovation, and startups.
Thank you.